start. Right, I noticed you first, sir.
I'm a private sector landlord, and if I understood it correctly, so I read 23%, I think you said, I was trying to make notes as I went along. 23% of cash landlords, 24% antisocial behaviour in the private sector. Well, first of all, it's regrettable that obviously your slides contain all the very difficult cases which clearly exist not only in Newham. It was sad to see that you didn't display any of the very good landlords and the properties they provide. However, just because a landlord may receive his rent in cash does not necessarily correlate to the fact that he is fiddling the tax. And I would like to understand a little better on your analysis of that. However, more importantly, the point is that you say 24% of the ASB is in the private sector, which perhaps leads me to the conclusion, if I may finish, that 75% is in the non-private sector. What is being done about that? And the your figures of 6,000 odd of the antisocial behaviour incidents, over what period were they taken?
One of the problems when you make a speech is people mishear sometimes, right? Which is why we'll put something in the area. I didn't say 24% of ASB was in the private sector. It's not that. I said that 25 to 30% private sector properties have ASB issues. 1/4 currently have or have ASB issues. Now, all I can tell you is that, and of course this is some of the stuff we do, some of the work we do, that is much more than any other sector we've got. Much, much more. And the problem, I can't say always that would be unfair, but my colleagues know how often that comes down to problems in the private rented sector. So that wasn't quite right. I'm sorry if you misheard that. My accent is not always the easiest to follow. I understand that. So it's 25 to 30% of private rented sector properties have an ASB issue. Right. Difficult cases. I'm sorry I showed the difficult cases. I didn't think I showed the good cases. I think you are good landlords, and I tried to be as clear as I could that good landlords are not the issue. I have people here from the council who rent. I see property that's very, my son rents. Nothing wrong with good quality property, I just assumed you'd know it. I'll happily give you some pictures of good property, but then what would the point be of licensing you, right? That's the whole point of trying to show you what's going on out there. Now the reality is, I don't know how many of you live in the borough, but the reality in our borough is what we live in, right? Now across from me there's a new mattress just appeared. This is the reality we face, right? Now, you ask about cash landlords. No, you're absolutely right. Cash landlords is not a bad thing. We'll make sure that all those landlords are reported to revenue, and if they're paying their tax, that's fine. I don't mind. But the reality is that there was a link, and you can confirm this, between the kind of cash landlords and the, you know, if you take cash and you kill, that's fine, but the cash landlords and the problems we had on the Milford. And we saw the link there, and that's why I referenced it. Taking cash does not prove you're a bad landlord, but there's a much greater likelihood that if you take cash that you were one of the difficult landlords. And that was right, Ian, wasn't it?
It certainly was,
It still doesn't answer the question why the good landlords have to pay a tax on a very economically difficult climate at the moment in managing their cash flow from rentals. And the effect of this is also likely to be that if you have a full private sector licensing scheme, I fear that my bank is probably going to be looking at me a hell of a lot more carefully, notwithstanding that we have good management, on the basis that they will want their own inspection to go through, notwithstanding the licensing, which would then have a further impact on the ability of provision of housing in the area.
Right, two things. You didn't ask that question, which is why I didn't answer it, right? Fair enough. I will answer questions if asked, right? So yes, you didn't answer that question. As a tip for people, if you want to answer the question, ask it first. Tax for good landlords, that's a problem. I do worry about that. One of the things we're going to do is get in touch with banks and insurance companies, and my argument would be if you have a good landlord that's accredited in this borough, surely that's something that should be taken on board by insurance companies and banks. They may not, but I'll tell you what, the one thing I'll be able to say is this is a person who takes the responsibility seriously. This is the person who we think is trustworthy from a borough point of view. We'll do the best we can. But I am very willing to discuss ways of reducing the costs. I'm very clear about this. I do understand that charging is it. We've said it's over 5 years. We've said it's £150, it's £30 a year. But if we can get to a place where we can say, this landlord is a good landlord that we can trust, we'll check it occasionally, we'll make it really cheap, we'll do that. I'm happy to discuss that. I want to minimise the impact on you, on the good landlords. I'm very clear, okay? But that's, in the end, any industry which has problems has to be dealt with. So you've got problems in health and safety in various places, and people have to deal with the issues and have to deal with the legislation, have to deal with the problems that come. Your industry has a problem. We are trying to help you clean up that problem. Because if we take these out and we get rid of these rogue landlords, that helps everybody. That puts you in a better position. One of the things I would say to you is, if we don't do this, these cases, they're just going to keep coming back. People are going to die in places that aren't properly protected, aren't properly put together. They are going to die in fires, and when that happens, there's going to be more and more folks. What we're saying is, look, let's get sorted now, let's get good landlords out the road, and let's get after the road landlords, and let's clean up the act of the industry. And other industries have had to do that too. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Can we move on to gentleman here?
Could you just tell us what the effect has been in your trial area of what you've been doing? Because that's been running for 18 months now. Have you seen a reduction or an increase, or has it made no difference? Or has it just simply excluded landlords from that area? Have they moved away, or have they not bought properties in that area and moved there? When they're buying a portfolio of properties such as myself, do you think, well, Newham, if I buy there, I have to pay X amount of pounds, I'll buy my properties in Waltham Forest?
Couldn't get as good a return on your properties in Waltham Forest. I'll let Ian answer that, because it's been a good result.
Yeah, if I could just say, I'm from London Newham. My name's Ian Dick, and I was one of the instigators of the Little Ilford MIZ. I've worked for Newham for a few years, and I recognise many of you in the audience from the landlord forums that I've attended. In Little Ilford, we've seen a reduction of something like 380 reports of antisocial behaviour over the last 18 months. When we started this in March 2010, we didn't know how it was going to pan out. We've also seen a growth in the private rented sector in that area. We've seen at least another 10 or 12 private rented properties come onto the market, and a number of landlords come into the market. We know that the perennial problem in Newham, as those of you who live, work, or go through Newham, the front garden's full of mattresses, as Sir Robin has introduced. We now have almost 99% compliance. We rarely see anything in the front gardens in our pilot area, whereas outside it's around about 75 to 80% still compliant. So we can see tangibly that there's been a real improvement, and we've asked residents, do you feel safer in the area? And they've said yes. And most of the landlords, not all of them, most of the landlords have actually worked with us to actually improve a lot of those, deliver a lot of those improvements.
So the tenants who put the mattress out in the front garden there, like the scummy tenants that no landlords would want here, they've just simply moved to another area. And that's what will happen with the Newham. You just push the problem out to some other borough. The tenants will always be tenants.
No,
if you have a scummy tenant, there'll always be a scummy tenant.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think if you work with people, I don't believe that people are scummy. A tiny, tiny proportion, but most people, there is something called conforming to the norm. People behave as they think other people do. There's tons of evidence around this, right? There's tons of evidence that says, there's really interesting stuff that says, if you say to somebody, don't, and tell them, what was that another story? If you tell people that you should recycle, you shouldn't have your towels washed, people know it. If you tell them most people don't have their towels washed every day, people will conform to that. People conform to the norm. We know we tackled the problem of fly tipping in Newham. We had a lot of fly tipping. Despite the fact we as a borough take 6 items free of charge, anybody can call up and we'll take it free of charge. We are not a difficult borough to do business with. If you call us up, we come and take it free of charge, no questions asked unless it's Bill's problem, in which case we're going to have a wee conversation. But what happens is that when people see it being done by other people, they think that's right. Now what we're looking for is something that says, look, when people go, if you've got a mattress, don't leave it there. It isn't necessarily the tenants moving in, by the way. It's not the new tenants leaving the mattress outside. Who's leaving the mattresses? It's not the tenants from what I can see. So it's reasonable to say, come on, we'll try and look for a proper start, that when tenants move in, we're looking to say, you've got to behave better. And the reality is that you, the good landlords, don't appear to have difficulties with tenants because they are not the ones that are the difficult ones. Now, I think people then start to behave in a different way. There's tons of evidence that happens. When we did the stuff on fly tipping and made sure there wasn't any around, the amount of fly tipping went down dramatically because people no longer thought it was accepted. And this is about getting at people, getting to this and saying, behave in a different way because that's what we're expecting. Now that's what we're expected to do as well. We're going to put a lot of resource into this to assist this, right? Because this is, it's very interesting. What's the issue people tell me is the biggest issue in your crime and antisocial behaviour? That is why we're doing it, because people have told us in survey after survey after survey after survey, the biggest issue is crime and ASB. So no, I don't believe. Maybe one or two will move. Well, if they move, they move. Fine. But far the biggest, what happens is people start to behave in a different way. We have to change behaviours.
By charging me £150 or £300,
Let's say
people are not
£30 let's say
the
£30 a
tenants are
year.
not going to stop, you know, doing graffiti or being a
I'm
burglar
sorry,
or
the
a
reality-
drug addict.
I'm sorry, the reality is in Little Ilford we've seen a big improvement. And you're talking what, 50p a week? You pay 50p
But
a week?
it could
But
be
it's not
£100
just
a
remind
week,
us of-
but it still won't make any difference. So
Well, I'm
burglar's going to be
sorry.
a burglar, a drug
We
addict's going to be a
have,
drug
we
addict.
have evidence from Little Ilford that it has worked. If it hadn't worked in
Because
Little Ilford,
you push
we
the
wouldn't
problem
be doing
somewhere
this.
else.
That's not our belief.
It
No.
must be.
No, it
A
isn't.
drug addict is always a drug addict, a burglar is
No,
always a
they're
burglar.
not. No, they're not. At that point,
must be.
everybody's taking
Just
the
if
criminal
you charge me
Not at all.
£300, he's not going to
Not
stop
at all.
somebody being a burglar.
I think it depends what your view of humanity
I'll
is
keep
like.
quiet.
well, I